Hello, and welcome to the Your Food Matters podcast. I'm Dr. Sue Kleiner, here again with my wonderful friend, Erik Bustillo.
Hey Sue, what's happening, everybody?
Oh, it's a good day here in the Pacific Northwest. It's finally not raining for a moment. How about you, Erik?
I am today live from South Carolina, beautiful South Carolina. It's
Woo,
a nice, sunny, no cloud in the sky, 79 degrees Fahrenheit.
you could be our national weather forecaster. You're all over the place.
Seriously, it was just like I was in Nashville like 4 days ago, and it was in the 40s, kind of thing.
Oh,
But yeah,
yeah, I know the weather is up and down crazy. But we are here regularly on the Your Food Matters podcast. We're so glad that you're here with us too. We are on all the podcast platforms and we are on the Move Nutrition Network YouTube channel where you can watch us as well as listen to us. And if you're enjoying our podcast, please share us with your friends and your colleagues. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We love our subscribers. So today, I'm going to share with Erik some of the things that I've learned along the way over the years working in industry and with my clients about plant proteins. We want to discuss, are there better plant proteins? And more importantly, if you are taking this holistic health approach to your diet, what questions should you be asking? Do you know how to ask about the standards being used, whether it's the nutritional composition of the food? Is it a processed food? Is it really better for you than an animal protein? Is it what we think of as nutritionally healthier? Uh, are you really trying to avoid animal products for ethical reasons? And what about the environmental standards? Many people are choosing plant proteins with the belief that they are better for the environment. What questions should you ask to find out if the product you want to buy really is doing a better job? So that's our topic for today.
yeah, and I think it's a hot topic. It has been for a good bit. We've seen, gosh, uh, I'm not gonna call them documentaries, but we've seen movies that are really like, yeah,
Docudramas,
docudramas or horror films in some cases, I guess.
right?
But they just like they're really trying to push this narrative, this idea of either plant based or plant exclusive, and just really making it seem like if anything that is animal related is, if not right now, eventually going to be terrible for you and terrible for the environment. So when you put enough information out there, it's going to make people think, and they're also going to think that they're doing the right thing or the better thing or perhaps the best thing by making these changes. So switching from animal based to plant based and that sort of thing. And for anyone who's out there who's wondering, plant based and plant proteins are essentially proteins that come from plants and nothing having to do with animals, as the name kind of suggests there. But it gets frustrating as a practitioner, as an educator. It's sometimes even just as a human who knows a little bit more about nutrition than maybe other people, that it's just like, gosh, like people will say things with such conviction about this topic, and it's always interesting to see how people can get either so angry and upset and passionate about it. But today, thankfully, we're going to be able to put out some facts, some factual information on all of this.
And the goal today is not to compare animal proteins to plant proteins for their
Yep.
efficacy and outcomes for muscle building or health or those types of things. It's not a comparison. The question is, how can you get what you hope you're getting when you purchase a plant protein? Because we've come a really long way in our not only our understanding nutritionally of how we can utilize plant proteins in our diets very well to accomplish the health and performance goals that we want, but also the quality of the proteins have changed, and the access to better quality plant proteins today has come a long way in the past, I'd say 2 decades for sure. When I started, there was only soy. Basically, that was it. If you wanted a protein powder, and in as an alternate protein source other than animal, I was eating tofu 40 years ago, but you had to find somebody. If you weren't making it in your own kitchen, you had to know somebody who was, and or pretty close to that, growing up in Cleveland, Ohio, rather than San Francisco or places that had large Asian communities and Asian grocery stores. And so today, these things are ubiquitous. Tofu, tempeh, pretty much you can buy in the grocery store. So let's dive in
Let's do
and
it.
see what we know. Um, the first thing again to say is, why are you buying or choosing to eat a plant-based protein? Well, in my diet, I have to say, and you've heard me say this, I'm always looking for variety. And so I not only enjoy the variety of plant foods when we're talking about beans and grains, I love having those foods in my diet. I do like soy-based foods like tempeh and tofu. Even the whole grains, that I'm using to bake my breads, those are offering some good quality proteins to my diet. But I am not selectively necessarily in those choices thinking plant versus animal. I'm thinking wide variety, right? And so I want everything that offers protein in my diet. On the other hand, when I'm looking for a plant based protein powder, that is for two reasons. One is, again, it gives me nutritional variety. I use whey protein powder. I like to mix in a plant protein. Um, but I'm also kind of doing investigation. I want to find what brands out there really are putting their money where their mouth is, that they actually have a high quality protein, that they are meeting the environmental sustainability claims that they are making. And so I'm out there kind of as an investigative nutritional reporter, trying products and asking the brand questions.
And is that something that, because you're very much involved in the industry and you've been in it for a while, and you're like a pioneer with all these things. How about just, someone who isn't on your level of expertise in all of that, and knows people, like, are they able to find out this information from these companies also?
Yes, yes, you should be able to. And if you can't, run the other way. Just like everything else we talk about, you should be able to get answers from the brand. If they won't answer it, it means that whatever they're doing is not transparent on purpose. And so, I don't want to give reasons why they're doing it, but what you put in your body, you should have full information about. And so let's start with just the category of perhaps a better health choice or a better nutrition
Mm-hmm.
choice. If that's why you are choosing plant protein, what are the questions you should be asking? If you were counseling a client, Eric, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to, first off, look for how many grams of protein they're going to get. That's one of the main things that I kind of like for people to focus on, mostly because with the people that I'm working with, they're looking to optimize their protein intake for reasons of either performance or something like health improvement. And we know protein underconsumption can lead to illness eventually. Um, so looking for the grams of protein in a plant-based protein, um, it's always important to look at serving size also. So that's one of the main
Right.
things that I'm asking them to take a look at. I'm saying, hey, look at the serving size, because ideally you'll be getting 25, 30 grams of protein, something along those lines. So take a look at the serving size. And what I find with a lot of plant proteins is that one serving size is 2 scoops. Um,
Right.
so now, if they're doing this in an ignorant fashion where they don't know to look at serving sizes and those things, they might just take 1 scoop and thinking that it's enough. Um,
Right.
and is it bad that they do that? No. Is it optimal? No. Because we want to try to maximize that. It's
Well, and also especially because one of the issues around plant proteins, a knowledge that it's not a problem, it's just information you need to know,
Yep.
is that the full quality of a plant protein, an individual plant protein, typically does not fully meet all the essential amino acids that we need to have to promote growth. And so, very often, the plant proteins that you get in a powdered form, like you're talking about, will be a blend. Will have, pea and rice, or there's a brand that I know of that's barley and rice, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But they're blended so that the lower amino acid in one of the plant sources is higher in the other one. And they make a great partnership so that you get complementary protein and full amino acid nutrition. But because it is not digested quite as fully as animal protein, we typically say you need to have about 10% more of the plant protein than you do with the animal protein. And so now, if you're only taking 1 scoop instead of two, now you've really compromised the amount of protein that you're taking in.
Yep, for sure. It's like a disservice in a way to what your body kind of needs there. And we
Right,
do have three. I think it was 3 episodes specifically on protein. You guys can always go
right,
back and check those out.
right. Right, exactly. So we're not going to go into the weeds too much, but to say that you should be able to see the complement of amino acids in the protein that you're taking when it is in a supplement form. So when you buy a protein powder, you should be able to either go online or turn the package around and see the list of amino acids in that protein. So you want the full complement of essential amino acids. And the other thing that you can use is kind of a very specific marker is the amount of leucine. And so leucine is kind of the key essential amino acid. It is one of the branch chain amino acids that is actually the accelerator for muscle protein synthesis. And this isn't only for bodybuilders or strength and conditioning athletes. This is for everybody, elderly people. It doesn't matter where you are in your life cycle. You want to be able to promote muscle protein synthesis, meaning the repair and replenishment of the tissues that you lose. And so we, from ISSN, we have our position paper, and the recommendation is anywhere from 700 to 3,000 milligrams per serving. I like to say actually 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams per serving. I think that that's really a solid choice in the athletes and the clients that I have worked with. So just turn your package around, look and make sure that you know the amino acid content and particularly the leucine content of the protein powder that you're buying. Because if you're purchasing a supplement instead of eating food, it should be quite mission driven and very specific.
Yeah, for sure. And keeping that in mind, the reading packages, reading the labels. For some people, it might seem a bit tedious or something along those lines, but we have to care about what we're consuming and how much of it we're consuming.
Right. And if you're thinking of food, it's kind of conceptually the same. And of course, we promote that you eat food, and food in its least processed state, although frankly tofu is a processed food, right? I mean, you don't pick tofu off of the soybean plant. And so edamame, popping the bean right out of the pod, that is pretty unprocessed, I have to say. You are doing the most processing by cooking it and popping the bean out of the pod and eating it yourself. But whether you're eating um, soybean based food or other grains, lentils, beans, other grains, as I said, legumes, nuts, seeds, those all are, fairly unprocessed. We say just mildly processed foods in order to eat them. And again, they will have a sort of a range of the total essential amino acid content complement that we're talking about, and that is this customary or traditional cultural food patterns where we see in Mexican food where it's corn and beans are mixed together. That gives you a full complement of essential amino acids. Or if it's rice and beans, that does the same thing. Various cultures have their natural complements. But what we've learned over the years, and I love how science moves forward, you don't have to eat all of these complementary proteins at the same meal.
Mm. Now, I am going to not encourage that because I love my rice and beans together. Give me all the
That's
rice
for
and beans
sure.
at the same time.
I And so the thing that we've learned, we've moved forward even in how we measure the methodology, the scientific methodology of how we analyze amino acid content of foods. And so we moved from one measurement, the protein efficiency ratio, which was a little older, that was how rats grow, to the protein digestibility corrected amino acid score, that was a laboratory measure of the amino acid content of foods, to something that was developed by and introduced by the Food and Agricultural Organization of the UN in 2011, which is called the DIAAS, Digestible Indispensable Amino Acid Score. So, indispensable is the same as essential, right? So, we in this country very often say essential. In other places of the world, they talk about indispensable. And so, that is really not is focusing on actually what gets digested in the intestine, which gives us a little bit better values for plant proteins. Is very interesting. um, and so and it also helps us in understanding combining proteins a little bit. And so the scores are similar, where in the PDCAAS, you'll see that the protein digestibility corrected amino acid score. You'll often see that on the back of a plant protein supplement, a powder. You want to see something one or better. Um, well, actually, in the PDCAAS, you couldn't get better than one. It would just be one. But in the DIAAS, it can go above one. But typically for our plant proteins, we don't see that. But when they're combined, that gives us a little more data. So, I've kind of gotten into the weeds a little bit, but uh, to understand that the digestibility is quite important, and it is somewhat individual. Some people, based on your gut biome, you may have more or less capacity to fully digest various amino acids from different sources. Again, you don't need to have these complementary proteins together as long as you have a good array and a good variety throughout the day.
Now, Sue, a question for you: would So, a lot of times we talk about bioavailability. Would we say that bioavailability and these protein scores, is that where bioavailability comes from? Or are they a little bit different?
It's somewhat overlapped, yes.
Hmm.
So um, we're getting this digestibility score, and that does um, it does or it is influenced by the amount of fiber, the amount of fibers that interact or will confound bioavailability, meaning that they bind to the proteins and carry it out, and you don't actually get a chance to digest it. So all of that is accounted for, and this but you can overcome it by just eating more. So that's what I said, 10% more protein if you are eating a plant-based diet. That gives you pretty much equivalent to the recommendations for total protein intake that are typically based on a varied diet, not a carnivorous diet, but a varied diet. If you're thinking, well, lower in saturated fat, yeah, pretty much for sure when you're eating more of these less processed whole foods. But once we start to get into ultra processed foods, things like the Impossible Burger, Beyond Meat, things that are all the other foods that are available that are plant based, but they are mimicking meat, those have so many things added to them. They are so highly processed that it really is a question of, is that better for you? Is it nutritionally healthier? And in a way, since the introduction where they became wildly popular because everyone wanted to try them, many of these sort of mimicking meat plant based products are starting to lose interest by the consumer.
Yeah. And it's interesting because gosh, I forget which one it was. I don't remember if it was the Impossible Burger or Beyond Burger. It was one of those two brands, but I did a comparison with on their nutrition facts with a regular like cow based burger, um, and the nutrition facts were not very different at all. Meaning, if someone were going to go towards the non animal based brand, um, if they're not doing it for the reason of not consuming an animal, if they're trying to do it because it's
Right.
healthier or lower in saturated fat, which is a lot of people's fear, the saturated fat content was quite similar from what I remember.
Wow.
Yeah, it was interesting to see. Gosh, and I wish I had the numbers because I made a post about it. This must have been like, I don't know, 4 years ago or something like that.
Yeah, but it's really important. Just read the labels,
Oh yeah.
right? I mean, that's on the label. If it's not, go to the website.
Hmm.
If you can't find the nutrition facts information, then number one, it shouldn't be on your grocery shelf. But if it's something you're purchasing, maybe at a farmer's market where they don't really have all the data, ask the questions, because it really, what are the ingredients, and determine just yourself, is this something that is meeting your better for you uh, goal? And that's really important. All I can say is read the label, read the nutrition facts label, look at the ingredients, and decide, is this the way you want to go? Does this meet your needs as far as a better for you product? Um, and the second reason that people, or probably, who knows what order these are really in, but if really you have ethical reasons driving you not to eat animal-based products, well, there's nothing really to say about that. Make sure that whatever you buy doesn't really have any animal products in it, right? So things that can sort of be under the radar for people if you don't know. Um, when it's called vegan cheese, if it really is vegan, it won't have any rennet, excuse me, in it. You will not want to be eating gelatin or jello or any kind of sort of product that contains gelatin, that may be under your radar. You may not realize that gelatin is an animal-based product. You need to really read the ingredients and make sure that you are getting what you think you're getting.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it, and really, it's kind of like the today's topic is plant proteins, but the theme here is to kind of do your homework, read the labels, look and make sure you're getting the things that you need and the things that you're looking for in your nutrition and your food, I should say.
One of the questions that I had just the other day was about plant-based collagen. So we really don't have, well, to start with, we've got proteins that come from plants and we've got proteins that come from animals. Collagen comes from animals, full stop.
Yeah.
So if there is a product calling itself plant-based collagen, at this moment, they are not very effective. They are not doing what the promise of collagen is at its best. The research that we have about collagen, whether it's for skin health and nails and hair, sort of the beauty side of the industry, or it is for connective tissue repair and some kind of, you may use it for bone and joint pain. It doesn't mean that collagen actually is efficacious to do that, but that's where the research is right now. And that's why people are including it in their diets. Plant-based, quote unquote, collagen at this point has not reached any efficacy for any of the hopeful promises for animal-based collagen. So just a word to the wise.
Yeah, because my understanding, and maybe you know more, is that they're essentially just getting the amino acids that make up the collagen and try to put them together and say, hey, look, this is what makes up collagen. So no animals were used or harmed in the making of this product. So, blah.
Right. Right, but the fact is that it's amazing, but when you consume collagen from animals in its, whether it's the collagen peptides or whole collagen, the long chain of collagen, it actually passes through the digestive tract sort of en toto, meaning that we don't break it all the way down to its individual amino acids, and that's why it can be functional. It gets across the intestinal membrane and actually is collagen as it enters your bloodstream, or collagen peptides that have function as well. Peptides meaning a couple of amino acids joined together, so they're not all broken apart. So when you just take the amino acids that are also found in collagen, which is a fairly simple protein that doesn't really work for protein building, just to be clear, when you take that, it doesn't work like taking animal-based collagen. So
Yeah.
enough of that. But
Episode for another
you know,
day.
yeah, but it's funny how what the industry does.
Hmm.
Okay. So the last one is a really big one for me. It is near and dear to my heart, and it is choosing plant proteins or plant-based foods with the hope that it is better for the environment.
Yeah, and I hear that so much. I hear the argument being made um, for plant foods and proteins and against animal source foods and proteins, purely from an environmental standpoint, from things like carbon footprint to usage of water, and all these sorts of things. And I'm just going to say one little thing, and then I'm really excited to hear what you have to say about this, because I tell people, I kind of ask them the question of, well, it's not good for the environment. So, in what way? Are you aware of regenerative farming? Are you aware of sustainable ways that we can do things that include animals? And lastly, how much water is used in the production of tomatoes and almonds, just as an example of a couple of plant foods. And then they're kind of like, oh, They kind of don't know what to say. And I don't know what to
Right.
say after that because, quite frankly, that's not my area of expertise. I'm fascinated by it, but I don't know a lot by it. So now I'm curious to hear everything that you have to say.
Yeah, well, so what we can present really are what questions should you be asking if this is something you care about and it's driving the choices that you're making. And so, number one, do the brands disclose the total amount of greenhouse gas emissions across all of the operation? Okay? So everyone's got a supply chain. Everyone has consumer waste. Everyone has waste in their operation. Can you see a report where the brand, which makes a claim it's better for Mother Earth, can actually prove it? Is it less than some kind of similar animal-based protein?
Mm-hmm.
Do they disclose the effects across all their operations on forest? So here, you're buying a plant protein. Is it from a plant that's basically they've cleared forest land to create cropland? It's a monoculture. It is traditionally farmed, industry grown. There's no regenerative agriculture. This is different than just organic, right? Organic certainly is better for Mother Earth and better for the farm workers because they're not applying these toxic sprays. But is it really better for the soil? Are they regenerating the soil? And as you said, how much water do they use? And so there should be some data that the company has to prove the claims that they're making.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't, we call this greenwashing, meaning, of course, it's green. It's a plant. It's much better for you and better for the planet because it's a plant. But like I said, it's a monoculture. We've cut down forest land to make cropland. We're shipping it from who knows where, halfway around the world to be able to get it to you, and then we process it in a plant that has tremendous greenhouse gas emissions and on, and it uses a ton of water. And so, we're growing in the middle of a desert, and so we're using a ton of water that otherwise is not available, and we're depleting the groundwater. That's what's going on in California and Arizona right now. So these things are questions that you can ask. I can't tell you about every brand, but I can tell you a couple of things. By estimates, the agriculture industry produces a third of the world's greenhouse gases. Okay, just so know that if you're choosing plant, you need to know that your brand is doing a better job.
Mm.
It is a primary driver of deforestation and uses as much as 70% of the world's freshwater supply. So it is not pristine just because it's a plant. Just to be clear. Now,
Those are scary numbers.
how yeah, so what is a demonstration of a better job? And I'm going to talk about one brand. I've mentioned them before. I have never worked with them, but I worked with their venture company that invested with them. So I'll just full disclosure, but I've never worked for this brand. I'm just a fan because I've watched them from the very beginning. And this brand is called Evergrain, Evergrain. You can find, I think they're evergrainingredients.com. So they are in the, you may have heard the term upcycling. And upcycling is taking a waste product, something that was a waste product in the industry, and instead of putting it into the waterways or putting it into garbage or even composting, composting can be okay. What was happening with this, they had upcycled barley. They have upcycled barley, spent barley from the beer industry. So the investor, the original investor, is from Anheuser-Busch. InBev, it is ZX Ventures, which is their sustainable venture arm. And it has been fascinating to watch this from the beginning. So there was an interest in doing something more sustainable with this barley rather than it used to be before we had the Clean Water Act. We would throw spent barley into the waterways. Well, that was terrible for our waterways. Once we had the Clean Water Act, they had to find something else to do with it, and it just went into animal feed, which, if we're thinking about the planet, that isn't that much better. And so they have found a way to enzymatically treat spent barley, which, of course, there's a ton of it because it's from beer making, and increase the quality of the protein in barley, and then process it into a powdered protein. And they blend it with a rice protein because that ultimately makes a very high quality complete protein. And they are not just doing that, but they have on their website what's called a life cycle assessment report, which reports every step of the way in their processing, in their supply chain, their water usage, all of that to the consumer.
Wow.
What it's this a sustainability report, and everyone should have an assessment like this. And this was ultimately, it was done by, I believe it was Beyond Meat. Originally Beyond Meat just made all these claims but had no data, and people were saying, show me the data. Ultimately they did do an assessment, and it is published. I think it was in 2022 that they published that. So Evergreen was founded on these principles, and there are other brands. I don't want to say this is it, but if environmentalism is your jam, is your mission for choosing plant based, then make sure that the choice you're making, the brand, is putting their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, I can appreciate that level of transparency, really. Hopefully, we can see more companies being more transparent with that. Sometimes I wish that as consumers, we didn't have to do so much digging and emailing companies. Like, if it was just there, that'd be really nice. So it's nice to hear about companies like Evergreen for sure. So I think that that's been such useful information for people to ask, people to think about these things.
And there are brands that are now including this. It's, I don't know if you can buy just Evergreen barley, upcycled barley protein powder itself. It is, they're an ingredient company. And so you need to look for the brands that are beginning to include it. They were at Supply Side West. There are brands. I did get a sample of their product, and they're doing a really good job. And it's kind of cool because I can put it into a hot beverage, which with whey protein, that's really hard to do. It
Yeah.
coagulates,
Yeah.
whereas the barley does not. And that's the other advantage of many of the plant proteins, is if you want to put them in a hot beverage, typically you can.
Mhm.
Um, so there's, different usage, and that may help determine why you use something and not something else. Like I said, I mix my whey protein in my milk in the morning. I add it to my cereal, and that's how I bump up my protein when I just have a bowl of cereal with milk. But in the afternoon, especially these dark and rainy days in Seattle, I like a hot cocoa. And so I am using a plant protein that I add to enjoy that. So, everybody's got their reasons of
Yeah.
how they use different foods.
For sure. Yeah, most definitely. Sue, thank you so much for going into the details with all of this. It was so informative. I think everyone's going to get something good out of this. At least one little thing for sure.
And I just want to say, I think both Eric and I, we have just naturally eaten plant proteins for our entire lives.
Hmm.
They've been part of our diet. I've never been a you can't do it, it's impossible person. It is just It is a healthy way to eat, whether you are have a variety of protein sources in your diet or you are plant specific. It can be you can be vegan and eat well. You just need to know what you're doing.
Amen to that. Yep.
Okay, well, I'm not sure what's up next, but we'll figure it out.
Yep, and you guys will listen in, hopefully.
Erik, as always, it is such a joy to spend a little time with you,
Likewise.
and we'll do it again. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. Also, if you're enjoying our podcast, please share it with your friends and colleagues. Until next time, I'm Dr. Sue Kleiner.
And I'm Erik. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thank you, Sue.
Take care. Bye-bye.